Hey guys, it's me, EODGamer here, and this is a really fun one. I've been waiting so long to actually make a video of Fuxuan versus Ruan Mei. Why do I say that? For those of you who are followers of the channel for a long time, you know that these are probably the two top rated characters I recommend any person consider picking up. Just tons of value for investment value for both of them, regardless of whatever your account is. But in this video, I'm going to choose one right at the end of the video. But I promise, as with all my which is the better investment for these character comparisons, I'll be super unbiased, logical only, and I don't share with you any of my personal agendas all the way until the end. And if you want to know my personal opinion, my thoughts, I will select one and I'll commit myself, I promise, to one of them right at the end of the video for any of you who care about that. But long story short, right now, I think it's a very challenging time for a person who doesn't have either of these characters. Let me just start off first with current value. And we always like to talk about current value for these two characters, mainly because we want to know what exactly we get out of these two characters from the get-go. If they don't offer us anything, it might as well be better we could just like wait a couple of while and then pull it later on. But first things first, if you are a super new player and you're trying to push into the memory of chaos, you're trying to push, for example, a little deeper in the game, you probably are looking for a bit more sustain in your second half of the team compared to a DPS. One caveat about Ruan Mei is she generally benefits players who are already running into momentum. You already have a team going, you have already like a main DPS, you have well-built rosters. Whereas if you're like a total newbie, right, you don't have anything at all, the first things first is survivability. So survivability is like if you could have a Maslow hierarchy of needs in Honkai style, the first priority probably is just to survive so you can dish out damage. The second priority following that will probably be making sure that you have DPSs to actually dish out the damage. Thereafter comes the luxury and a bit of cherry on top, which is talking about your buffers, your debuffers, to help you do even more damage from a short window of time, and blah blah blah, so on and so forth. In my opinion, I think generally sustains higher priority compared to buffers. If you were to talk about a player who's like today just joined the game or something like that, that would be probably my thought process of current value. Then again, these two are very universal characters. They can be fit into most teams and run them very, very well. As we know, Ruan Mei is like super flexible. So it's not just important to consider current value. In fact, then some of you might be wondering, when will Ruan Mei like edge out over Fuxuan in terms of current value? I think for players who are later in the game, players who have no problem surviving, maybe you already have like well-built 4 stars, you have already very good survivable characters, or maybe you're going into the pure fiction game mode who doesn't really require too much sustain. In that case, you want to reach for more stars, you want to push in a little deeper. Ruan Mei is actually going to turn even some 4-star DPSs into like 5-star DPSs. For example, like Xue. We have a lot of videos on Xue with Ruan Mei, you can check it out. If you are a new player into the game, you already have been playing for maybe 2-3 months, so you are not really like on a Trailblaze energy deficit, you don't have no resources, survivability is not a major issue. That is when I think Ruan Mei actually is very significantly better for your account in current value. Note that everyone's account is totally different depending on how much money you have spent, how much resources you have based on how long you played. So that's why it's to answer your opinion on like which is better requires a bit more customized advice. We are going to go through these categories one by one and don't just form a decision based on one category, and that's why we want a second category called alternatives as well. So talking about current value, which you can see, one is more early game, one is more later game significant. If you talk about really end game, in my opinion, both of them are about the same depending on your roster, and each account will then be different. Alternatives is where it becomes a little bit more obvious which one is slightly superior than not. I'll let you make your guess before we do our analysis, but let's talk about who are the alternatives to these two characters. For Fuxuan, I think it's very clear. Alternatives in the sustain category are the other 5-star sustains. Why do I say only 5-star sustains? Is because these are generally the characters who can solo sustain and add even more to that other than just like soloing sustain. So you have characters like Aventurine, you have characters like Ho, and you have characters like Luo Cha. So these 3 characters generally are the main competition to a character like Fuxuan. They offer very different niches, and we have done like tons of other videos to them already. I'm not going to be saying which of the sustains are better than the other, but by and large, the general rule is you only need 2. And if you already have 2 and a new flashy one comes up, you're generally going to enter into one of them is going to have to be benched, because it's very difficult to put two sustains on the same team, two limited sustains on the same team in future. So there is going to be some inefficiencies. You want to pull for sustains that go the long run, and that is in the alternatives section, which will cover a little bit of like more of them. But first, let's shift the attention to Ruan Mei's side. Who is Ruan Mei's alternatives? I think her closest proxy for an alternative in general sense is Robin. Robin can be played into most teams that Ruan Mei can be played into also. Robin sometimes is better than Ruan Mei in certain team compositions. Sometimes she's not as good. For example, in like break teams, Robin is inferior. Follow-up teams, Robin is definitely like number one, depending on what is your playstyle, what do you like. Given that a lot of people might have joined the game when Dr. Ratio was around, I would say that actually tilts in the favor slightly to a character like Dr. Ratio. Ruan Mei, on the other hand, also competes with other Harmony characters that are buffers in general. For example, like Sparkle. You could even argue that she competes with Harmony Trailblazer also in break teams if you are looking to only have one slot for buffer and you want to like add in another DPS inside. Because if you run like Harmony Trailblazer and Ruan Mei, then you're left with like the last slot sustain and then one main DPS, maybe like Firefly here. So technically, Harmony MC is also competing with Ruan Mei. So let me just put it up on screen. The other, of course, you can have like defensive units. You can have Pella here as well, who all act as like damage increasing units in general. So Harmony has a bit more competition in terms of alternatives because your objective is to increase damage. Whatever form that comes, whatever form that may be. I think, in my opinion, for alternative section, Fuxuan actually has lesser alternatives compared to Ruan Mei, and I'll give the section to Fuxuan and let me explain why. The closest alternatives, a free-to-play alternative for Ruan Mei, in break teams, you have Trailblazer already, who is very, very strong. Considering that it's $0 spend, everyone gets Trailblazer for free. You can even claim it in a mail now with 2.3. That is actually a very, very important fact to consider. And other than that, you also have good alternatives in Robin who don't come in like a, let's say she has a first rerun later on Robin. Might not be in a period where we are lacking of resources, all our characters that we really, really want to pull urgently. That is something to consider as well. Now we are in like this period where everything needs our attention. We want to pull for everything, but we just don't have the resources to pull all these meta DPS. Sparkle is also not too bad. And one of the big things that a lot of us are not thinking about is beyond just the scope of damage buffers, harmony buffers, nihility debuffers, we also need to think about, do you really need two harmony characters on each side of the team? Because if a lot of us, for example, join in Akirion's patch also, you kind of realize that you don't have enough slots to fit in two harmony characters unless you're running like a double harmony character in the team. In that case, Akirion already has one side which is filled with nihility characters. Your other side is going to be filled with like only one harmony. So you technically only need one. Even like maybe harmony MC is good enough if you're just playing like a Firefly break, a cheap Firefly break comp. So you can run like something like this, one on each side, Akirion one side, Firefly the other side with harmony MC. You can save tons of resources, enjoy the game a bit more. I know a lot of people don't like Ruan Mei's personality. For those of you who don't force yourself to pull a character just because it fits into meta. Ultimately, there are many ways, as we talk about on our channel, to help you build your account to progress into the late game by doing things that you like. That's what this channel is all about. I want to support you regardless of what crazy idea you have. We have a team composition to help you succeed too. So that is my thought process. Fuxuan, I think, has lesser alternatives because you are mainly only choosing 4. And the idea of choosing which 4 to pick, you want characters that can scale very well into the late game, because as you can see, the biggest problem with limited sustain units is you do not want to pick a sustain unit that in the end becomes bench later on, because that is huge inefficiency. Out of these 4 characters, the one with the least amount of weaknesses and possibility to be benched likely will be Fuxuan. We talked about it a lot in our other comparison videos. If you're interested, check them out. This video is specifically comparing both of these two characters, Fuxuan and Ruan Mei. So I would just want to like keep it on point rather than like digressing to something that is irrelevant. But for those of you who are interested, we have it on our channel already. You can check it out too. Same format, just whoever versus whoever. You can find it on the channel too. So that is for alternatives. A bit longer than I expected, but I think it's important for me to elaborate, because if I don't elaborate, it probably wouldn't be very clear. But talking about current value of game state is one thing, because right now it's just like how much value they give. Now what's the landscape now? We need to consider not only the current value but also the future value of these two particular characters. And very, very important, because these two characters people that pull these two units generally are looking to scale their account with time. You probably are going to play for like 1-2 years and beyond as well. So you want to get maximum value out of your account. I think, in my opinion, for future value, competition-wise, who looks better in terms of like who is going to succeed more, Ruan Mei tends to be favored. There's a lot of trends that are pushing in favor of Ruan Mei's favor right now. You have the break effect teams with Firefly. You have a lot of the Genius Society potential, which we'll talk about later on in our potential section. But a lot of the meta teams like new break effect sets, new break characters, even more maybe coming out. You can see some incentive for Hoyoverse trying to introduce more break characters in the game to push for a different style. Does actually shift the winds in Ruan Mei's favor. She likely is going to be more attractive and more attractive as more of these break characters come about. The question is, do you think that another Harmony character is going to come out who also adds value in the break section? That is something that is a big caveat, a question mark. Because now could be they are trying to just sell Ruan Mei. Once she sells off, then they'll just introduce a new Harmony character that is like totally specializing in break effect. Maybe a true 5-star limited Harmony MC variant. And for every single benefit that people are just like tunnel vision focusing on Ruan Mei right now, is just totally obsolete in the next set. Which is a very valid risk because Harmony characters are very easy to sell, unlike defensive units who are a little bit trickier to sell. So that is one of the caveats and risks that we have to think about whenever we talk about better investment. When characters are too obviously overpowered, too obviously good, why don't you just introduce a new one, sell them for those people who don't manage to pick Ruan Mei up, and then their value is just going to degrade. So that is some things that I like to think about when talking about future value. Fuxuan, on the other hand, her value arguably is more or less like capped out. Is a stable decline over time because new characters come into the game, generally competing slots. But limited 5-star defensive units are a little bit harder to sell than characters who are increased damage and are flashy. Why did Aventrine sell very well, other than for the fact that he had a perfect story, is because he also does damage. So it's very easy to sell a defensive unit that has some sort of damage, big flashy numbers from a defensive role. Everyone starts to like that and think he's super meta. But the fact is, there are some downsides to that character. Fuxuan, on the other hand, a bit more complete of a character, more difficult to power creep than any other character in the game for the way her mechanics work. If you want more of like me narrating on the strengths of Fuxuan, check out our Fuxuan specific guides on the channel already. I'll probably like link it in the end screen or something. But in my opinion, I think Fuxuan is one of the hardest characters to power creep in most turn-based game that I've played. I've been playing turn-based games for 20 plus years already, and she's probably, her kit's one of the most holistic, as I mentioned, since I first saw her kit being released. So future value wise, I think I give it to Ruan Mei, but future value risk, I will actually give it to Fuxuan, because I don't see them like incentivized to sell you another limited sustain anytime soon. As we mentioned, if you already have 2 out of 3 of these units here, 2 out of 4 of these units here, you probably won't be pulling for another one unless they are super overpowered, super power creep, and stuff like that, which I don't see that happening anytime soon. Rather, if they introduce a new flashy Harmony character right now that is scaling specifically for break effect, maybe they delay 2 turns or increase the damage by massive amounts when enemies are broken, or something like that. I could see that very well happening. It sells much easier. So risk-wise, I think I give it to Fuxuan. She has much less risk in terms of future value. Ruan Mei has more upside, of course. So whether you are a more pessimistic person or optimistic person, risk-averse, risky kind of person, I think that depends on you. I don't have a conclusion for you there. I've given you both sides of the story too. So for the next section is potential. So potential is unlike future value. We talk about tangible things, risks, and upside as well. Potential is more about looking Hoyoverse as a company and what is their business trends. From what it seems, Fuxuan is from the Xianzhou Luofu arc, which arguably is like kind of over already, right? The Luofu is over. Yes, they are trying to introduce new things like the Xianzhou Zuming, Xianzhou Yaoqing and stuff like that, where they're trying to bring all the different Xianzhou ships together, which is now a new added favor for Fuxuan, but we don't know how much the Divinator will actually participate in all of this, so I wouldn't give that a high chance of success of upside for Fuxuan. But Ruan Mei, on the other hand, has Genius Society tailwinds to propel her. You have maybe an eventual 5-star Herta. Who knows, maybe Madame Herta will finally show her true form, if there is, or whatever not from lore perspective. You have Screwlum. You have a lot of other Genius Society members who have just been briefly mentioned. If they synergize with each other very nicely, for example, similar to the IPC, following like maybe And standalone hunters technically not really, but if more significance in the story, you could see Ruan Mei coming back more in the future as well. But for now, the chances of that happening is not really that significant also. She said she's gonna like just ditch us at the end of the cutscene and just explore new worlds. If we see her kind of thing, right? So in my opinion, for Hoyoverse perspective, from lore perspective, both of these seem roughly even. There is no clear winner in this category of who Hoyoverse might prefer, but generally speaking, both of them are Xianzhou lawful characters or of the Xianzhou arc. Is Ruan Mei considered as Xianzhou lawful arc? She technically has a Chinese name, right? But they never actually mention her origins, whether she came from Xianzhou or something. So for that fact, I guess both of them are roughly even. I'll blame this section a tie. A rare tie because usually one will be a little bit more obvious than the other. But maybe I can value add in some way rather than leaving it as a tie. What is the incentive for Hoyoverse right now? Hoyoverse, in my opinion, is more incentivized to sell brick. They want to push out the whole break factor, harmony characters, multiple DPS factors, and it does tend in favor of Ruan Mei, which does promote a lot of that. So you can see some trends going Ruan Mei's way, and it's very smart of them to release Firefly and Ruan Mei together back to back, because then you force players to spend a lot of money. So I don't know whether is this like trying to empty our wallet so that we don't have any resources upcoming, so force players to spend maybe a threat from Wuwa, the Wuthering Waves, they fail. And a quick shout out as well, since we're talking about Wuwa, we also have a Zenler Zone Zero channel. If you like the content we have covered for you since the start of the game, even before the game, we're actually doing the same thing for Zenler Zone Zero to help us get on to a good start and also scale our accounts, get good investment value for the characters. We share our thoughts on our second channel. You can type in at EODGamer ZZZ just behind the normal string, or you can just search EODGamer Zenler Zone Zero on YouTube. You'll find our guides there for any of you who want to hit the ground running and don't make investment mistakes in Zenler Zone Zero. Just a quick shout out for ourselves. Do support us there. We really appreciate it if you like our format too. But back to here. Next up, let's talk about the last thing on this list, which is free-to-play kit. And here we have a clear winner. Ruan Mei is very difficult to invest in, or very difficult for a brand new player to invest in. You need a lot of stats. You need break effect, you need to have her with some energy restoration, you need either her signature light cone or a 4-star is it Memories of the Past? I think so. The one that gives like break effect is a limited 4-star light cone at S5 to really see her start to pop off. She scales very nicely with Eidolons, but at E0, S0 without all like the limited gacha light cones, it is not that easy to get her at her max potential, to get her going. So free to play, total free to play, brand new in the game, will struggle. It can be conquered with time because technically 4-star limited light cones, you will get them eventually, like 1 year, 2 years. But 1 year in, even as a player who spends money, I still do not have some limited light cones at 5-star rarity or at Super Imposition 5. Whereas for Fuxuan, on the other hand, you can actually get by with a lot of free-to-play light cones for this character. Landau's Choice, of course, you can just have it at S1. Just one copy already is good enough. All you get is just better efficiency in terms of reducing the damage she takes, but it doesn't limit her overall requirements. Slap on HP percentage, pretty much this unit is good to go. It's not super expensive. That is my opinion. She does scale well with slight investment in terms of a bit more spending, like S1, E1 as well, gives her like additional crit damage buffing to the overall team. But this is probably a character that you and the whales will probably have almost the same efficiency or usage ability of Fuxuan. Whereas if you go and see Ruan Mei E6 S5 kind of combo, it looks very different from your Ruan Mei. So don't get distracted by all those whale Ruan Meis out there. It's going to be an inaccurate representation. So my opinion, free-to-play kit, Fuxuan's a lot easier to build, a lot cheaper to build as well. Ruan Mei does take some time to get going, and the difference between a whale Ruan Mei and your free-to-play, I'm assuming your is like free-to-play, not trying to like stereotype or anything or blanket statements, but a free-to-play Ruan Mei is going to be a lot weaker, and that is my logical comparison between the two. Relics wise, Fuxuan is a lot cheaper to build. Ruan Mei is going to require a little bit more stats, and new sets are always coming out, so that might require you to like refarm, and if you're trying to farm for your DPSs, might be a bit tricky. So as promised, at the end of this video, I have to choose one of them, and I will tell you honestly my opinion. This is a very tricky one. I have always said it from the start that one of these characters will probably be my top 1 or 2 at any single point of time. Right now, these are my top 2 characters in the game that I'll recommend most people pull for. And here's the thing. I have to choose between one of them to actually make a conclusion. That was my promise to you. And my honest opinion, if you want to make a guess, who am I going to pick? if any of you want to guess. So 3, 2, 1. My honest recommendation and who I will pick will actually be Fuxuan over Ruan Mei. And I will give you a very, very simple reason why. Ruan Mei is very strong. She fits the most competitions, comms well, but ultimately, it's very easy to make Ruan Mei irrelevant by introducing a character that specializes in a 5-star limited break. The risks are very clear and it's very obvious that you could introduce a very strong character in future that competes with Ruan Mei. She is now a very good character, but for that risk alone, Fuxuan is a much cleaner example of a character that will likely still be relevant 1 year from now, 2 years from now. Very difficult to power creep this character, and there's no incentive for Hoyoverse really to power creep sustain defensive units. Whereas it's a little bit easier for Hoyoverse to introduce new playstyles in the game that makes Ruan Mei maybe have a little bit more competition. So thinking of the downside probability, is the aspect I'm going here. Both of these are perfectly good units. They are my top 2 at any point of time. Ruan Mei is probably like my top 1 right now, but I do see risk, I do see investment value. I think Fuxuan is just slightly higher, especially since if you are a person that already has these 3 over here, you likely don't want to spend on another character. In that case, you want to pick the one that scales best with time, and Fuxuan I think is the one that scales best with time. If you get her, I think it's a very, very safe bet for most people. But granted, I think Ruan Mei benefits more people generally, so I want to give that quick disclaimer. But personally, out of all of these characters, I will pick Fuxuan if I could only choose one between the two. But to be honest, I'll pick both any day, and that's my honest recommendation. These 2 are my top 2 in Honkai Star Rail. If you appreciate such content, do like and subscribe for more such future videos. We have a lot of other comparisons on the channel as well, so you can check them out. I'll leave it in the end screen here, whichever one, because every single person's account is different. And if you want specialized advice, join our Discord. We have a lot of people that are very willing to share their opinions with you too, based on your account, your progress, because this is ultimately still a very general statements that I'm making here. Thank you guys so much for watching again. See you in the next video.